President Biden wants new rules on guns. What are the problems he's trying to solve, and will his new rules fix those problems? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe and take a shot at that like button, metaphorically speaking. Last Thursday, President Biden announced 6 initial actions to address what he calls a gun violence epidemic.
Gun violence in this country is an epidemic, and it's an international embarrassment.
But the problem for the president, and for any president really, is that it's hard to pass gun control legislation through Congress. This has been an issue for decades. So, Biden has another idea. His administration will not wait for Congress to take its own steps to save lives. Basically, Biden wants to sidestep Congress and use executive orders for gun control. Most of Biden's executive orders involve ordering the U.S. Justice Department to propose new gun control rules. He wants them to propose a rule to stop ghost gun proliferation, a rule on pistol stabilizing braces, and a model red flag law for states. We'll get to what those things mean later. On top of that, the White House announced investments in community violence intervention programs. Biden is fully aware that he's going to get a lot of pushback from gun advocates on the political right.
Nothing I'm about to recommend in any way impinges on the Second Amendment. They're phony arguments suggesting that these are Second Amendment rights at stake from what we're talking about. But no amendment to the Constitution is absolute.
No amendment is absolute. That sentiment is exactly why there's lots of pushback from gun rights advocates. They think Biden wants to take away people's guns. Is that what's really happening? Let's look at the specific rules Biden wants to put in place, starting with ghost guns. Ghost guns are either really cool or really scary, depending on your viewpoint, just like actual ghosts. Ghost guns is another way to describe homemade guns. People have been making their own firearms for hundreds of years. Americans have always been allowed to do this. But if you don't want to make your own gun from scratch, some companies sell gun assembly kits, where you get a bunch of unfinished parts and then assemble the gun yourself. Gun frames and receivers are often marketed as 80%, to make it clear that they are technically unfinished. All that's needed to finish the frames is a commonly available tool like a hand drill or a drill press. There are also now 3D printed guns. These are considered a type of ghost gun too. From a law enforcement standpoint, ghost guns are a problem. Ghost guns don't have serial numbers. That makes them untraceable. Plus, you don't have to go through a background check to make one or order the parts. Advocates for gun control are pushing for Biden to classify ghost guns as traditional firearms. Doing that would require anyone who buys them to undergo a federal background check and put serial numbers on each ghost gun. California already requires gun owners to put serial numbers on ghost guns, though not everyone complies. Surprisingly, it's the criminals who tend not to comply. A pro-gun control nonprofit called Everytown for Gun Safety warns that ghost guns are becoming the weapon of choice for violent criminals and gun traffickers. They're becoming easier for convicted felons, minors, and white supremacists to get a hold of. Everytown also reported that demand for ghost guns skyrocketed during COVID, although regular gun sales also skyrocketed during COVID. So it's more like there was a huge demand for guns in general, and not like people got bored baking sourdough and doing jigsaw puzzles and decided their next quarantine hobby would be making their own gun. How big of a problem are ghost guns? Well, over the past 10 years, Everytown found about 2,500 ghost guns connected to criminal activity. That's less than 1% of all guns used in criminal activity in the U.S. But for President Biden, it's still too many. Biden said that he wants to see ghost gun kits treated as firearms under the Gun Control Act. This would require sellers and manufacturers to add serial numbers and run background checks on buyers. That could be tricky because it's hard to draw the line on what a weapons part is. What if it's just a replacement part for an existing weapon? What if it's a part that could be used for something else? And should Americans have the right to make things in their own garage without government regulation? For those reasons, there's a lot of pushback from gun rights advocates about regulating ghost guns. And that's not the only executive action that gets complicated. More after the break. Welcome back. In addition to cracking down on ghost guns, President Biden wants to tackle stabilizing braces. What's a stabilizing brace? It's a brace that goes around your forearm. It's different from a shoulder brace, which is more tightly regulated. Here's how it works.
Pistol braces are really cool because now you can have a short-barreled rifle, put one of these guys on it, and abracadabra, the ATF calls it a pistol.
Biden wants these modified pistols to be subject to the National Firearms Act, basically treating them as rifles and not pistols. People who buy or already own a pistol brace would have to pay a $200 fee and register it with the government.
We want to treat pistols modified with stabilizing braces with the seriousness they deserve. A stabilizing brace shook in a pencil essentially makes that pistol a hell of a lot more accurate than a mini rifle. As a result, it's more lethal, effectively turning it into a short-barreled rifle.
What was that?
A stabilizing brace shook in a pencil essentially.
You're gonna pistol?
A stabilizing brace shook in a pencil essentially.
Shooting a pencil. Anyway, stabilizing braces were originally designed to help disabled combat veterans with one arm use their weapons safely. But now they're a political issue, because one may have been used in a mass shooting in Colorado. Biden essentially wants to reverse the ATF's 2017 clarification that stabilizing braces are perfectly legal accessories for large handguns or pistols. Although the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, also noted that using an accessory, like a stabilizing brace, employed as a shoulder stock would make it an unregistered NFA firearm. The ATF looked into imposing screening and registration requirements on brace-equipped pistols back in December last year. But it retracted that after 90 Republican House representatives wrote a letter criticizing its criteria for being ambiguous and malleable. Biden, however, wants to get the ATF to crack down on stabilizing braces by having all stabilizing braces qualify as shoulder stocks. Again, that would mean law-abiding gun owners would have to buy expensive permits for their existing weapons. It's unclear whether these permits would stop criminal activity. Because, and this may surprise you, criminals may not comply. But Biden wants to do more than just reclassify stabilizing braces. He also wants every state to have red flag laws. More on that coming up. Welcome back. Red flag laws. They authorize law enforcement or family members to petition courts to temporarily remove guns from people if those people are said to present a danger to themselves and others. President Biden wants the Justice Department to draft a model red flag law so states can start crafting their own laws. Biden says red flag laws have helped reduce suicides and violence against women. Research in Connecticut and Indiana has found that the enforcement of the laws saved lives, about 1 fewer suicide death for every 10 to 20 cases of gun removals. On the other hand, evidence for whether extreme risk protection orders work to prevent gun violence is inconclusive, according to a study by the RAND Corporation. Red flag laws are controversial because they allow law enforcement to seize firearms from people who have not used them to commit a crime, under the assumption that they will later. This sidesteps due process. What if law enforcement decides to use red flag laws to target minorities or political dissidents? A couple years ago, left-leaning Vox criticized President Trump for suggesting the use of predictive AI to detect mass shooters before they strike, saying this won't work. They said it raises a whole slew of ethical concerns. And when Vox agrees with the pro-gun people, that gives you something to think about. Some states already have red flag laws, but Biden wants every state to have them. And that's not all Biden wants to do to prevent gun violence. To get to what he calls the root cause of gun violence, Biden announced this: a $5 billion investment over 8 years to support community violence intervention programs. This might actually be the most effective step towards preventing gun violence in Biden's entire plan. It may not do much to prevent this type of gun violence, mass shootings, but it could reduce this type of gun violence, common gang homicide. It's hard to say for sure how effective this $5 billion investment will be because there's not a lot of detail in Biden's current plan about how the government will help community violence intervention programs. But in general, studies show that these programs do work. Community violence intervention programs like Cure Violence are really interesting because they've been shown to reduce gun violence, but you don't really hear about them in the news. Let me know in the comments below if you'd like us to do an episode about them. Now, all of that stuff I just talked about looks like it will come from executive orders and not laws. But Biden still wants Congress to pass new gun control laws. That includes a bill requiring universal background checks. Background checks are already required for the vast majority of gun sales. But in some states, private sales don't require background checks. Biden wants Congress to change that at a federal level. Biden also wants Congress to close the so-called boyfriend loophole. The boyfriend loophole means that in some cases, people convicted of domestic violence charges can still purchase guns. So how have people reacted to Biden's announcements? Proponents of gun control say that Biden's policies will save lives. They call it a huge victory for the gun safety movement. Chelsea Parsons, Vice President of Gun Violence Prevention at the Center for American Progress, says Biden's announcement signals the beginning of a new era of gun safety in the country. The Washington Post editorial board praised Biden for using his limited unilateral authority and for calling on Congress to do more. But for pro-gun advocates, these proposals are all going to cause problems and restrict people's rights. The National Rifle Association says that Biden's policies are extreme. These actions could require law-abiding citizens to surrender lawful property. Texas Governor Greg Abbott calls for legislation to make his state a Second Amendment sanctuary state. Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota says Biden is overstepping his legal authority and undermining the Constitution. And Gun Owners of America says he is circumventing Congress with his executive authority to throw down the full weight of the federal bureaucracy against law-abiding gun owners. Trevor Burrus of the Libertarian Cato Institute argues that most gun policies are performative and don't do much to mitigate gun deaths. Even The Trace, a left-leaning journalism outlet, admitted that California's attempt in 2016 to require residents to register homemade weapons with law enforcement had low compliance. So will Biden's proposal stop gun violence? Or will they just restrict the rights of law-abiding citizens? Or is it somewhere in between? Leave your comments below. And remember, America Uncovered is supported mainly by viewers. So visit patreon.com/America Uncovered. Contribute $1 or more per episode. We rely on your support to help us keep making episodes like this. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.